Peace everyone, Unmask here. Welcome back to another live critique session. Hope everyone is having a fantastic week. Hope you're ready for the weekend. I am. The weather here is absolutely perfect, so hopefully you're enjoying the late spring, early summer time frame. Hello, Shiny Lynn, Susan, Joanne, Claire, Diane. Good to see all of you. All right, well, let's just go ahead and get started. I got a number of lovely projects that you guys have submitted for today's critique. And up first is Lisa G. She did this project here using pan pastels and polychromos pencils. I'm actually surprised at how many pastel plus polychromos projects I had submitted for this month's critique session. As usual, feel free to ask me any questions that you get or that you come up with during the stream. Happy to take on as many questions as possible because I am here to teach you anything that I can during these short sessions. Alrighty, so first thing, I really love this picture. I love the colors, the expression, doing an open mouth smile / laugh. Very challenging for portraits. I love the little butterfly in the hair. Just a nice touch of detail. There's a lot of really great things about this project that I like. The colors, I really like the colors, and I love that the pink, sort of fuchsia color of the flowers. You can see this sort of reflecting in her cheeks and then also in her lips. And then you have, I'm not sure what this is, it's some kind of ball, but the color harmony throughout the project is really well done with these pinks and purpley colors. Now, where I think this project could be improved is a little bit with the dynamic between the background and the main subject. For instance, if I just, and I do this a lot for a lot of the projects that I get submitted, and it's a common theme that I see because doing subjects with backgrounds can be very tricky at times. And a lot of people still have to learn the different types of contrast. And one of the, most people, when they think of contrast, they just think of value. They just think, okay, well, one color being lighter than the other. And that's where you get, objects standing out better just by enhancing the value difference between them. When in reality, there's 3 types of contrast. The first one, as I mentioned, is just the value of colors. So you can increase contrast through value differences. So if in this case, say the background was darker, if you went like darker green and the subject was brighter than the background, she would stand out more. And then vice versa, if the background was lighter and subject was darker, she would also stand out more. So that's the type of contrast that pretty much everyone knows. And the other 2 types of contrast, and what I'm highlighting here, is textural contrast. So the background's already slightly blurry, the way that it's painted in here, but it could be blurrier, it could be softer. Like the sky up here is quite, there's still quite a bit of texture lines that you can see. It almost looks like there was a like an attempt at creating a little bit of bokeh circles in the background at the top here, but I don't think that it came across the way that you'd hope. And instead, if it was just softer, it would be a little less detail that distracts you from the main subject. Not that it distracts you a lot, it's just the very subtle things that you can make adjustments to and consider in the future. So that's why I added this layer where I just blurred out the background completely, just made it much softer. Now, of course, you can come back with some of the details that you want to be a little bit more in focus, like this flower here. Having a little bit of detail isn't going to distract you too much from the main subject. So of course you can consider that as well. That's where you're playing with the depth of field a little bit, which can get tricky. But if you're using a reference photo, it's you have a better chance of sort of mimicking that effect. Oh, hello, Catrice, Ella, Teresa, Georgina, good to see you. Anyways, so that's one thing that you can do. And the third type of contrast, before I forget, is saturation. So color intensity. So if I were to take the background and just arbitrarily remove the saturation from it, you can see how it softens the background. So here's, oops, not that. Here's the original saturation levels, very bright. But if you tone it down, you go a bit grayer, but you can see that it makes the colors in the main subject stand out even more. So those are the three types of contrast that you can use to sort of set your main subject apart from the background. So you have value, you have saturation, and you have texture. And in this case, I've decreased the texture and the saturation. You can see just how much more she stands out in comparison to the original. So it's still, you still have the same feeling, maybe not pull the saturation as much as I did, but I'm kind of going extreme so you can see the difference there. Either way, it looks really good, like this. I'm just giving you sort of food for thought, potential ideas for future. The other thing with this project here, hands I know are very difficult, but if you're going to do a subject where her hand is going to be in the picture, you really want to make sure you get the anatomy correct. This finger, that's not how the finger would be holding on to the ball there. Also, these fingers kind of coming straight down like this. So the hand, you can kind of think as the palm as like a shovel, sort of like this shape. So you have this shape kind of right in here, and the fingers connect at these joints, right? The knuckles here, and they kind of fan out. But the one thing about the fingers is that, so the index finger, that's a weird looking index finger. Sorry, I'm drawing this with a mouse. So the index finger comes out, and then there's a gap between the index finger and the middle finger, and between the ring finger and the middle finger here, these fingers tend to be closer together. And then same thing with the pinky. There's usually a little bit more of a gap here. Not this extreme. I'm just sort of giving you the idea. And the fingertips follow the same curve as this. So that's generally how it goes. And right now, the index finger is significantly longer than the middle finger here, which isn't the case. The middle finger is the longer finger as it comes up to this point, and the index finger is down a little bit further. So you really want to make sure, I know it's difficult to do hands. Trust me, even after all these years, I struggle with hands, but it makes a big difference to spend that extra time. Also be careful with outlining fingernails. You look at your own fingernails, they're not so clearly defined as you have them here. This is a very very good case for drawing what you think something looks like, as opposed to drawing what it actually looks like. Because you try to define the fingernails and you end up getting fingernails that sort of look like they're bleeding because they're so defined around the edges. So you want to be careful with those things. The other thing to consider here. So you have some of the shadows laid out, but this looks rather like an outdoor shot with a bright sunny sky. So you should see this shadow here much darker, and possibly even darker than this. So this shadow coming across, I imagine, would be much darker in reality because of how bright the sun actually is. I can't speak for how the photographer may have taken the photo here. Most likely in direct sunlight, most photographers will use what's called a bounce light. They'll have like a round object with like satin material that reflects the sunlight back. That's how you'd get the nice soft shadows on the side of the face, but the face doesn't really have any obvious shadows, which begs the question, this shadow here that you have and the shadow on the arm suggests the sunlight is coming from here, but the face doesn't have any obvious indications that that is what is happening. And so I feel like this side of her face should be darker underneath her eyes a little bit, just to show that light direction over here on the side of her nose, perhaps. So there's these things that I struggle to understand the direction of the light source that you're trying to establish here. So you have to be conscious of that when you're doing your portraits, establishing the light and then making sure that it's universally applied throughout your project. Oh, hey there, Chrissy. Good to see you. Hello, Barbara, Carol, and Ozzy, and Tarek. Good to see all of you. All right, so fantastic job, Lisa. That was a good picture. Up next is Manish. And I've seen this reference photo before. I actually think I have this reference photo saved deep in my folders of collections of reference photos from over the years. And this is pastel and polychromos again. So another combination of pastels and colored pencils, which I don't personally do because I'm a stickler for texture, like physical texture, not the drawn painted texture. And I don't like the idea of mixing the waxy material of colored pencils and the velvety texture of pastels. So you won't ever catch me mixing those mediums together, although they do work beautifully together, as you can see here from Manish's work. Now, you didn't leave me a lot of room to critique this because it is so well done. I really like the color that you chose for the background. If I remember correctly, this is not what the background looks like from the original reference photo. I like that you chose this nice kind of yellowish green. And one important feature here that I like to point out is that the background is less saturated than the colors that you see in the chimp here, which is really great way of bringing the chimp forward. Also, the value obviously in the fur of the chimp is much darker than the background, also helping it stand out. So since this is so well done, there's not really, as I said, not really a lot of ways that I can think of improving on this. But one of the things, since I could be mistaken, this could be the original picture or the original color from the background of the reference photo. I'm not sure, but if you did change it, one important thing about altering the colors of the background for images is that you have to maintain color harmony between your subject and its surrounding. And what I would have really liked to see you do is utilize that green in some of the transitionary areas of the fur. Let me go really low with this. So all I did was color pick the background, and I'm just going where the colors change from sort of the darkest areas. I'm just going to add a little bit of green into them. So for instance, this is a really good example. You have this bright highlight and then it goes into the dark. So right there at that transition, I'm going to use green to help fade those colors into one another. Here's another example where the knee is fading into the darker grayish colors. Maybe right here on the shoulder, a little bit here, and then all over the back right here. Maybe a little bit here, because one of the things with black fur, I really like dark black fur or hair, because you have such freedom to manipulate the toning colors that occur within it. And this is a really good example. So here's the before. It still looks really, really great, right? It still looks amazing. But by adding a touch of the background into it, now it feels like the chimp is more inside that environment and not just kind of cut and pasted on top of like a green screen of a background. So utilizing that, you can really help your subjects fit into your scenes better. The other thing that you can do, so there's a lot of orange colors in the skin. You can sort of use that to your advantages too, because it's close to a complement. So if we go like a red orange, perhaps you can even consider using some red oranges to highlight the fur, a little bit to tone the fur, maybe just in the highlights, because that's going to add a complementary state of the fur, making it stand out from the background. And I just kind of threw this color in a little bit randomly, because you almost don't have to think about it too much. But by adding that sprinkle of color to otherwise just pure gray black fur, right? Because here it's just flat black and grays. There's no color tone to it. And by throwing in maybe some green or maybe some orange red, you could even consider utilizing the color of the sky. So if you just imagine the sky color, you can use some blue around the highlights, because that's going to show the color of the sky a bit. So where it highlights, so now there's a bluish tone to the fur. So this is just emphasizes the reason I love dark furs, because you have like endless freedom to just choose whatever colors you want. You have the blue of the sky, or you can just go and use greens or oranges or reds, complementary colors, whatever you want to do. So yeah, fantastic work. Let's move on to the next one. Up next is Christine. This is another polychromos pastel. She used the powder blender method as well. So there's a whole bunch of colored pencil pastel mixtures today. Okay, Ella. Yeah, you take care. No problem. I'll see you later. Hey there, Shiny. Good to see you. All right. So this one, I was looking at this one for quite a bit before the live stream, because I was thinking what can I even say about this? It looks really, really good. It's very, very clean. The frog, the texture, the details, everything is pretty spot on with this project. Where I think you can utilize a bit of your artistic license is with the grass or the whatever these leaves are, because one of the things with these leaves is they're almost too perfect, in the sense that they're just a continuous sort of soft, almost almost bamboo-like texture, and they kind of look like stalks of bamboo, like perfectly symmetrically stretched and curved. And I don't have the original reference photo to say what it should actually look like, but I think you can get away with a lot of the perfection of them, because that's kind of, they're a little bit too perfect. And where I think it sort of throws me off is right around here at the top of the head. Let me get a layer here. Sort of this area. Sort of this area here. And the reason is because you kind of lose the head of the frog against the leaf behind it. And I would have loved a little bit more emphasis on the separation between the objects, because all of these lines are like really directional, really perfect. The spacing, the colors, there's not a lot changing from, say, this part of the leaf to this part of the leaf, or any of these parts. They're all kind of very symmetrical and perfect, which just doesn't feel natural in the first place. Like, it doesn't feel natural because, you know, leaves are all different. And so I would have kind of liked, let me see if I can do this really quick. I'll just, I'm going to do the same thing that I did on the first project, where I copy it and I'm going to blur it. Yeah, I'll blur it like that. And I was thinking about making the background darker than the frog. So I'm gonna darken it a little bit, and then let's just do this. And then now what I want to do is I want the background but behind the frog to be darker than the frog, so that the frog stands out more. I considered going lighter than the frog, but the frog is already quite bright, right? And so I think lighter would just be not the path to take. And so this is what I was kind of envisioning for a potential improvement for this project, because like I said, I don't have the original reference photo to say whether or not the values are correct. I am assuming that they are. Christine's a fantastic artist. I don't think that she would just arbitrarily miss a significant value difference from a reference photo. But I think that, you know, photographs aren't always perfect when you want to copy them. And so you make these artistic choices to make changes to improve the composition of your artwork. And I think this is a good example of how you could have done that. You could also maybe even consider desaturating the background a little bit, not having it as bright green. So now it's darker, it's less saturated, and it's not as in focus. So it pushes it further away. It makes it less impactful to the overall composition. And now that we have it darker, the frog just pops off the page more, in my opinion. So here's the before, here's the after, and you don't have to go this extreme. I can even go less extreme than what I have it. You can do it just subtly. So say right there. Even that, I think, is a good improvement. Because it makes this frog stand out, and you get these nice clean edges around the frog that just help it look more detailed around those parts, because it's already very detailed right here. But other than that, I don't got anything else to say. It's a fantastic piece for sure. All right, up next is Diane, and this was you may have seen me doing the live stream of this last Friday. And I was doing the polishing stage of mine. I don't know, you can kind of see it behind me. It's right there. You can only see the edge of it, so you can't see too much of mine, but you can always check the live stream from last Friday. I was doing the polishing stage of it. And so this is Diane's copy of that project. This is a project that we just finished over in the art club. And I am thoroughly impressed with everyone that did this project because everybody did fantastic. It was a difficult project for me to do. And just to see how well everyone else did it, it was kind of a proud moment for myself because I was able to explain it well enough that so many of you got results this good. So I was kind of more impressed with myself than anyone else, a little bit. But anyways, there's no doubt this is great. I really, really love the details that you put in here. Yours looks a little bit different than mine. But I think I like yours more. Your bowl of jam here. It really looks good. It really looks good. Your apples, your apples almost look like they've been polished to a mirror finish. You can really translate the reflection of the glass here into the apple. All these really nice highlights throughout the shadows and stuff. They look great. One of the other things that I really like is your leaves for the elderberry twig here. They just look thick, don't they? They look like real hefty leaves, and it just adds a nice look to them. They just look really great. So I'll stop gushing here and give you some constructive feedback. The first thing is I see a lot of horizontal. Now this could be camera or whatnot, or image quality, but I see a lot of directional, horizontal directional lines in your background. It's very subtle, and I have to nitpick because, I mean, when you guys submit such good artwork, I have to be a little nitpicky. So let me get bright color here, maybe this color here. And let me just point out some of these lines that I see. So first thing, around the lid here, I see lines that go like this, sort of curving with the lid. I know that we didn't use masking film for this project, which makes filling in the background all that more difficult because you have to work around these objects, and I can see the lines working around the objects. Other lines that I see kind of going like this, and they're horizontal. I see horizontal lines throughout this shadow. But if we go over to this way, now I see vertical lines. I see lots of vertical lines here. And so you've sort of got these mixture of directional lines that you can subtly see throughout the background. And you know, I hopefully I didn't understate the difficulty of the background while we were working on it, because we worked on the background for like 2 weeks or something. It was a very long process filling it in with pastel pencils. And one of the things I remember describing is that the background actually has a very vertical line texture. I'm not sure what kind of material it is, but it actually has like a vertical texture to it. So I tried to make sure that we avoided those horizontal lines. And now I know that working around the objects can be very tricky, and it's hard. There's just no easy way to put it. It's difficult. So that's one thing in the background. It's just a small, subtle thing, and I'm being nitpicky. Let me see. I know that a number of you were struggling with your line art disappearing as we were working through this project. And it looks like that line art disappeared a little bit right in this area, because this glass this stem, it's the stem, right, is much thinner than what you have it. And also it's a little wonky, you know, it's just a little goofy looking. And then also the base is not symmetrical. So this side is smaller than this side here. So the base would be symmetrical, obviously. So very, very small things, inaccurate with the stem and the foot of the glass here. Other than that, the bottle here, this line is actually vertical, but that's not a big deal. I mean, the bottle could be slightly thicker at the bottom. That's not anything that have to be too nitpicky with. Other than that, great texture here with the engraving on the bowl. I love the subtle colors that you throw in here. I see some reds. I see a little bit of the red showing up there. I see some of the brown and red in there. Nice subtle colors. Now you got the crispiness over here really good on this pancake, but these pancakes, they could maybe use just a touch of more contrast. It could be the photograph also, but I feel like the darker brown maybe. I'm looking back at mine just to see a comparison. That's I mean, that's about it. I mean, it just looks so good. It looks so good. It has a nice Diane style to it. So fantastic work. It came out amazing. All right, up next is Jennifer. Yeah, everyone did such a great job on that. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Susan. I'm glad you stuck through it, Diane. Yeah, it came out great. All right, so up next is Jennifer, and Jennifer is actually one of my earlier students. I want to say 2019, I think. Yeah, I think most of the 2019 year, she was a student of mine. And as you can see, I won't take all the credit, but she is definitely turning out some amazing work. She did this with colored pencils and pan pastels. So another colored pencil, pan pastel mixture. And yeah, I've looked at this I don't know, a few times, because she sent it to me when she finished it. And so I saw it then, and then I looked at it after she posted it. I looked at it before the stream. I looked at it yesterday. And for the life of me, I can't think of a single thing. I was sitting here, I was like, can I even nitpick anything here? Because I couldn't find anything. I really couldn't. And I just flat out couldn't. There might be some artistic choices that I would have made differently for this project. But again, it could be the photograph. Like, I kind of like the idea of enhancing the reds in the flowers to complement the greens, because I love complements. I love to utilize complements in my artwork. So I find ways to increase the vibrancy of certain things to play off complementary colors. But the depth, the texture, the subtleness of the leaves, the stems and everything is just spot on. The veiny texture of the rose petals themselves, just perfect. It's just perfect. I can't tell. There's a few little white spots here that almost look like water, but I don't think that's the case. I think it's just some texture. And then also, I think one of the most impressive things about this project is the double reflection in the surface here, because you actually see two edges of the same flower. It's not necessarily that it's blurry or out of focus. I imagine that this table like a glass table or something. And what's actually happening is it's reflecting on the top surface of the glass and also reflecting on the bottom surface of the glass. And that's why it feels like it's out of focus. But in reality, you're actually seeing two reflections stacked on top of each other, but slightly parallaxed. And so you can see the edges, like if I zoom in, you can see this is the edge of one reflection, and then this is the same reflection, but the edge is shifted. And that's difficult to do. Another good example is you can see how these lines double. They double a lot. And that's because they're all shifted very slightly. This is another good example here, this line here. That can not only be hard to visualize, but it can be hard to look at too. Can be very hard to look at. So the fact that you captured that, oops, oh, I didn't mean to draw on the actual photo. The fact that Jennifer was able to capture that is spectacular. Yeah, it's hard to believe this is not just a photograph. It's just so well done. And like I said, I can't think of anything. There is no critique of this. Oh, hey there, Mache. All right, I'm going to move on to Ella's piece. She did this dog here. And, you know, this was one of the projects that I was kind of looking at quite a bit, because there's nothing wrong with not being hyper realistic or even very realistic in your artwork. I certainly have grown to appreciate the more stylistic, looser styles, and greatly appreciate the skill involved in making them look good. And there's a few things that I really like about this project. The first thing, okay, so this is pastels. She did this with pastels, and it looks like she used the maize colored pastel matte. And I really like that it shows through the entire image. So she didn't try to cover up the paper 100%. She utilized that orange paper, and she let it show up through the entire image. And that orange shows up in the fur of the dog. And then she has the black fur that she uses blue, mostly uses blue to establish the black, and the orange and the blue are complementary colors. So you sort of won me over with the complementary color scheme going on. The grass, everything is equally soft. So one of the difficult things, and I struggle with this a lot when I try to do something a little bit looser style, I still don't feel like I've been able to master a loose style. And so that's what makes me appreciate the looser styles a lot as well, is that I know how difficult it actually is to do it. And one of the things is that there's a consistency in the sort of brushstroke effect that Ella has here. The softness of the grass goes right into the softness of the fur, and there's no really hard lines. You can consider maybe around the eyes. They're nice crisp lines to kind of bring you focus. A little bit of the mouth, a little bit of the nose. That's really all you have for the crisp lines, which kind of gets you to focus on the face a little bit more. Where I think this could have been improved is I'm not sure what is supposed to be happening in the background. Sometimes, you know, the abstractness of the loose styles can be interpreted several different ways. Maybe you could consider that this is a cloud, or maybe it's a hill with like a bunch of white flowers. There's many different ways that you could consider what this lighter section is in the background. Maybe it is indeed a cloud and the sky starts actually down here. Because the way that I was visualizing it was that this is also grass, and then I wasn't quite sure what this white part was. And I think that if it were to be a cloud, I think that maybe smaller cloud. The biggest issue that I have with this white space is where it cuts through the dog. So it sort of, let me grab a different color here. It comes through this part of the dog. And when you have lines that line up with certain joints, we call those tangent lines. And you want to avoid tangent lines. Now, to define exactly what a tangent line is, so say you have a curve and you have a point. You have a single point on that curve. So say that's the point. The tangent line would be a line that touches that point like this. So imagine like a ball, or like playing pool or something, right? You have the pool stick. Where the pool stick hits the ball, it's like hitting on a tangent. It never crosses. The ball never, crosses the tip of the pool stick. And in art, you want to avoid, most of the times, you want to avoid tangent lines. I'm trying to think of a good example other than the cloud cutting through the neck, the perfectly like the neck of the dog. Imagine the cloud up here. So this white part of the cloud, I'll try to put it in a little bit, but imagine the cloud coming up to the very tip of the ear, right there. So the tip of the ear and the cloud both intersect perfectly. That would be another tangent line that I would recommend avoiding. And so these types of things are really important when doing a looser style, because they can cause like an intersection that forces the viewer to focus on, or forces the viewer to be distracted by. And this cloud, or whatever this white smoky stuff is, coming through this joint of the dog is very distracting. And if it was just a bit lower, if it was just a little bit lower, maybe I can sort of put it in a little bit lower. If it was a little bit lower, it feels more natural to not really disrupt the flow of the anatomy of the dog. So that's the one sort of thing that I was thinking about to sort of improve the composition of this. The other thing is I really like the use of blue, but I think the use of blue might be just a tad bit much. You could probably consider using a little bit more black, but not necessarily that needs to be the case, because I like the blue as well. I like it being kind of all blue also. I think, okay, so this is a shadow. So I can, yeah, this is the cast shadow from the head. And you can see a little bit of the shadow. Maybe the shadow in the grass could be further over. Maybe that could be a thing. Also, this could be a bit darker, kind of following that same cast shadow, this side of the face, something like that. Yeah, small stuff. Anyways, fantastic job, Ella. I really like the colors. All right, up next is Matthew, and he did a portrait of his mother's horse, I believe. And this is like one of the rare occasions where he just used colored pencils as opposed to using colored pencils as a base layer and then, or markers as a base layer and then colored pencils on top. Really, I only have like two things to critique about this. It's really well done. Nice composition, good colors. The fur texture on the horse could be more pronounced because right now it sort of has a plastic horse look, like a very realistic plastic horse. So it's a bit. I know that the hair on horses can be very shiny, and that's why you get these nice reflective lines. But it is, at the end of the day, still fur. And so when you're dealing with this fur texture, you know, now that I think about it, I don't know if I've seen Matthews do animals. I think I remember a dog. I think I do remember a dog, but it was a dog within a portrait of like two other people or something. I could be mistaken, but mainly portraits of people is what I see from Matthew. So fur might be something that you need a little bit of extra attention to. One of the things, the most important rule with fur and hair is to always work in the direction. Always work in the direction that the fur is going, even if it's very smooth looking, like a horse's fur, because at the subtle level, you're going to see some of those directional lines, and those directional lines are going to reinforce that it is indeed fur texture. The other thing about this is maybe the lighting. It is hard for me to determine what the light source actually is in this particular layout, because one of the things that stands out to me is that I don't know what the head strap, I don't know what it's called, but there's no discernible drop shadow of the headgear here. So if I just grab a color, maybe real light, come in here, and I'm just going to invent it, even if it's not meant to be there. So I'm just going to add a small separation of the headgear here and give it a little bit of a drop shadow to lift it off of the horse. Because I like I said, I don't know where the light source is, but I just feel like it needs some kind of separation to make it feel like it's not a part of the horse. And the other thing takes me back to the discussion about contrast. And though I really like the colors and the style of the background, because the horse's fur, there's no texture, it just sort of has that plastic look to it. It competes with all of the texture in the background, kind of this like cloudy space for the background, sort of classical photograph backdrop kind of vibe from it. But there's still quite a bit of texture in it. And so texturally speaking, the background is more interesting than the texture of the horse's fur. So you sort of have those things flip-flopped. And if I just get rid of the texture in the background, like I did with the other projects. So let's put this here, and then so I'll just remove the texture from the background by softening all the details, leaving the frame. The frame is fine, but here again, you can just see how much more the horse stands out from the background. And getting that soft look with colored pencils is very difficult. But it is indeed very possible. And even if you don't have the subtle texture of the fur, just by having a softer background, you can see how much more the horse stands out. Oh, hey there, Lisa. All right. Fantastic job, by the way, Matthew. Looks good. All right. Up next is Lisa Alderink. So we have three Lisas. We have three Lisas. I'm going to get confused with all the Lisas that we have. Hey there, Electro. We had Lisa earlier as well, Lisa G. All right. So this one, I was looking at this one for a little while too, before the live stream, kind of thinking about where to improve it. It's a really great pastel pencil project. It's a image that has a very clear story to it. Obviously, the soldier that has passed away, sort of his spirit standing there, and most likely his wife and child that he tragically probably left behind, his dog tags, which is usually a memento that is passed on to the spouse when a soldier is killed in action. So it has a very clear story, which is great. I mean, artwork that has stories are always fun to look at and sort of appreciate. I'm not sure if there's relevance to the number on the truck. It's hard to say because I really don't know. Oh, wow. Lisa, thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate that. Wow. I wasn't expecting that. Greatly appreciate that. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second. So anyways, this project is really great. I like the story. It's really well done. And there's a few things that can be improved on, which I think will help tell the story even better if it's done again. The first thing, so perspective is always going to be a struggle for many people. Perspective is something that our brains don't really translate well to two dimensions. And that's what stands out with this project. Oh, thank you, Electro, for the super chat as well. Fantastic. You guys are wonderful. Thank you. So I'm going to shrink this image a little bit to give you an idea of where the perspective went wrong. So let me bring this over here because mainly it's the truck. Mainly it's the truck that throws me off. The perspective distortion makes it distracting. And because I recognize the discrepancies in the perspective, I know what the issue is, But to a normal viewer that's just seeing this image for the first time, they won't know what's off about it. And so if you look at here, so here's where the hood of the truck finishes, and you have this line that goes off, and so you can't tell where the top of the windshield is, but you're given a little bit of a clue by the windshield wiper, which, by the way, the windshield wiper looks a little small because if you swing it, it's not getting anywhere near the bottom of the window. So let's just extend the window wiper up. It's going to have to touch the mechanism that swings it. So we're looking at a window that's like this tall. So the window is going to be taller than the hood is long, which I'm not too familiar with Army Jeeps or whatnot, but I'm pretty sure that's not going to be the case here. So the perspective of this truck is it has a bit of a distortion here. So this is gonna come down something like this. I can't really tell what the wheel well is doing. The wheel well would probably be something like this. Sort of have that. The door, there'd be like a mirror here. So the truck, the dimensions of the truck from the information that we're given, our minds, even if we can't perfectly draw the truck, our minds can construct what other parts of the truck may look like based on this small amount of information. If I had to guess, I'd say that the truck here, the layout or the composition of this project was free-handed. I'm guessing that it was free-handed from some reference. And the way that the truck is laid out here isn't quite accurate to what I think the truck should actually look like, because the hood looks very narrow for what I believe it should be, and the window looks much taller than what I think it should be. And those small inaccuracies can make the truck look weird for the viewer that looks at it. So that's just something that I was trying to consider when looking at this and thinking of how I was going to critique it. The other thing here, the color palette. So the color palette really it really utilizes like this sort of greenish gray brown colors, with the exception of the flag. And so there's sort of a competition going on here. And this is the challenge when you do story-based artwork, is there's always sort of this this unspoken competition between what is the most important thing in the project. Where do you want the viewer to look first? And for me personally, I feel like the main focus needs to be the family left behind. And where I think that you could maybe try to make it stand out more is just by enhancing the contrast of the helmet here a little bit. So if the edges were a bit darker, maybe not this dark, I'm going to lighten this in a second. Let me just do this. So let's just maybe in that a little bit. I'm just trying to get it more rounded, or more rounded looking, I guess you could say. Making it a little bit darker There's no clear indication of light source based on a cloud or based on the sky color. I'd say maybe it's just an overcast. There's just clouds. There's no direct sunlight. Maybe a little bit of that gray on top of the helmet just to enhance the three-dimensional quality of the helmet. Try to bring more emphasis to this, more emphasis to the family, because I feel like this is far more important than the visual representation of the country the soldier died for, and then maybe tone down the saturation on the flag, because everything is very muted already, and then the flag colors are very vibrant. So instead, do the opposite. Do the opposite and have the colors of the flag not so vibrant. It still shows up a lot, still very obvious, the story behind it, but just trying to bring more focus to a certain aspect of the story of the image. I'm trying to think of anything else. I mean, you could utilize color in the image, but I think considering the time frame that such an image, these helmets, 100 years ago, most likely black and white images or black and white photos, the only thing that was going to be available. Yeah, I'm trying to think of any other way to sort of alter the focal point from the flag to the family here. Compositionally, you could you have a center line, so you could crop slightly differently. That's one way you could do it. So let's see, maybe I'll just crop the whole thing here, give you an idea. So the window, so think of levels of importance. This whole thing is not important, so you could actually cut off more of that. Let's move this slide over first. So if we line the flag up with somewhere in the third here, maybe bring this over, because the back of the tent's not as important. I'm trying to find a way to bring this here. Yeah, maybe something like that. So sort of splitting the difference. I'm using the rule of thirds here a little bit. Trying to bring this story element closer to a part of the image that is a little bit more focused. You can see the soldier here is closer to this upper third. This helmet is closer to this intersection of the bottom third, and you still have the flag pretty close to this third here. And so you get a little bit more of this layout. You have I guess you still have quite a bit of the window. You have less of the tent. The tent's not as important. The front grille of the car, not as important. And these parts of the image now stand at intersections that sort of just better composed. Blurring the background, I did consider that where these bushes are. You could soften that a little bit, but yeah, I mean, as you get further away, the more focused you want to bring to this, you could get blurrier. Anything past the tent, really. Either way, fantastic job, Lisa. All right, moving on to Joanne's. So this, as you can see, is again the pastel still life project. Another fantastic job. Everybody did fantastic. Really great on the values, the subtle value difference of the table and the background. Spot on, very, very good. All of the colors, very good. Again, you might have been one of the victims of losing the line art here. This stem of the glass looks a little wonky, a little thicker than it should. So maybe you just you had to sort of guess a little bit and draw it in with the disappearing line art. Nice values on the metal bowls. Good engraving texture here. Could probably utilize a little bit of the white highlights. They could be lost due to the image or the photograph rather. But if we had, I won't go like pure white, but I'll go pretty bright. So I remember putting in some of these small edges here. Small lines, totally pixelated, zoomed in like this, but utilizing the white to show the reflective property to give the engravings a little bit of depth. I don't know if you utilized any of that, but it just adds a little shine factor to some of these details that are just kind of small little edges. I don't know if you added it or not, but that's something that you could have considered. You could still consider if you wanted to, but you don't have to. You may have worked smaller than me also, so that might have been it. Oh, you're welcome, Lisa. Yeah. Oh, hey there, Sneaks. Sorry, I didn't mean you. I didn't see you sneak in. Let's see. I mean, other than that small thing, there's not a whole lot. Now, I can make out some of the lines. Let me grab a color here. I can see some of the lines in the background. I don't know if this is from the graphite. So this might have been from the original line art. I can see some of these lines. And that will come up if you put pastel over graphite. I think I can see a line here and here. And so you got to be careful with having too much graphite on the paper. Okay, so you did do it smaller. So I mean, the fact that this is like almost half the size that I did it. It's basically like half the size that I did it. Sort of makes it much more impressive, actually, considering how much detail you're still able to get. Yeah, you just gotta be careful with some of the graphite lines. I don't know if that's the case, but I can see some lines here. If I zoom in, maybe you can see it too. You can see this line, sort of like this, and I'm guessing that's the line art underneath the pastel, because it will show up like that sometimes. So you got to be careful not to have too much graphite on the paper. Oh, hey there, Catherine. I have you're up in a couple. Yeah, I have you right here if you can see your name. Other than that, fantastic. Yeah, it came out really, really good, Joanne. Up next is Cherry. Is this the one? I think this one was very small. So you can see that it's really pixelated. So I don't know what happened, Cherry, when you uploaded it to Facebook, but it was teeny tiny. When I pasted it in Photoshop, I think it was about this size. So it was really, really small. So I'm not going to be able to really speak much about any details. But considering how good it looks, I don't really have much to say about it. It's just, gosh, it looks It looks so good. It really does. It looks so good. It appears like you have brighter colors in the background. I don't know if maybe you fiddled with the saturation levels of the photo with like a photo filter or something, but I like it. Yeah, I like the bright background. And your plate here, your plate here is phenomenal. Like it's scary good how good this plate is. Like it just I realize that it's pixelated, but um, even at a pixelated level, I can appreciate the precision in the values and colors that use the plate. No doubt, this is the best plate. Like mine, I don't feel like mine is as good as this. I feel like you beat everybody on the plate. Um, it looks really, really good. Again, the stem of the glass looks a little bulgy, tiny bit bulgy. That again, that could be the picture quality. Um, apples look good. Bottle here looks good. The chalice looks amazing. Chalice looks really, really good. Yeah, I like the see that subtle line there. There's like this etching here. You can see that line. Very, very good. Nice elliptical tops on all of your objects. Really, really great. Gosh, am I just not looking at the reference photo like pixelated right now because it just looks so good. It really does. I think again with the background, so you have a little bit of halo effect around the leaves and a little bit on the bottle here. And that's really like, especially like right here, big halo effect around the leaf. That's really the only thing I would suggest trying to avoid in future projects. A good way to check whether or not you have that halo effect is to just step away from your project and see if anything looks like it's glowing, because the leaves look like they're glowing a little bit the way the light follows them around the edges like that. That can be frustratingly difficult, which is why I choose usually to use masking film so that I can just freely fill in the background and have to worry about halo effects. But goodness, other than that, it's just amazing. Yeah, it looks perfect. You could have maybe gone a little bit brighter on some of the detail on this bowl. Yeah, couple brighter edges for the texture, for the details on that glass bowl, but yeah, looks great. Awesome job, Sherry. All right, up next is Shell. You did put more red in the background. Oh, okay. All right, yes. So up next is Shell. She did this graphite project here, and I mean, it looks really good. The lines are good, clean edges, nice smooth textures in the values here of the light bulb. This is a really difficult subject to do because there's a lot of subtlety in the values for the translucent light bulb on a white surface. Now, going back to the discussion of values and contrast, one of the most important features, if not the most important feature in any artwork, regardless of subject matter, regardless of medium, regardless of skill level, is contrast. Contrast is one of the most important features of good art. And generally speaking, people hold artwork in higher regard as the contrast levels increase. And just to clarify, contrast levels, oftentimes it is mistaken mistakenly used interchangeably for values. What contrast is the measurement of all the values within the image. So it is how black things are and how white things are in the image overall. So for instance, if we have a look at this, the graph, the value graph using the threshold. So here's the graph of values in this image. And what you can see is that mostly the image exists right around here. So of all the values, they're very bright. They're right up here. What this represents is everything all the way to the right is pure white. So if we go over here, that part of the image is pure white or darker. And so as we slide this back, so everything that is here or darker shows up. And so if we go back here, we can see that the darkest values happen exactly where you want them. Those dark parts of the that part of the light bulb. I don't know the parts of light bulbs, but obviously for that look of the metal, a little bit of the filament here. But you can see that it stops right here. Nothing shows up. Nothing shows up. It's empty. And so this whole section of this graph is telling us that you're missing almost half of your potential values. Now, given that this is graphite, anybody that's used graphite knows that just no matter how many layers you put down, you're never going to get pure black. There's always going to be, a blacker color than what you can get with graphite. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't try extensively, especially with a subject like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double this image, and then I'm going to just do multiply. You can get this dark with graphite. You can 100% get this dark with graphite. This is not pure black by any means. And I'll add a spot of pure black right next to it, so you can see how dark pure black is in comparison. So there's pure black. You can get this dark with graphite for sure. And you want to try with a subject matter like this, you want to try to get as dark as you can on those sections of the light bulb in order to increase the amount of contrast that you have overall. And so all I did was double the values. So if I take this now, and let me just merge these together, and now I turn on the threshold. Let's have a look at our graph here. So you can see, so right here is where it stopped before. That's where it stopped before. So I pulled more contrast down. So now we have a wider range. That before we were about halfway. We only had about 50% of the maximum contrast available. And now we have closer to 75, maybe 80. And by increasing that distance between the darkest value and the brightest value, we just flat out get a better quality drawing. And that's just something that you can do to any of your artwork. It doesn't matter what the subject or medium is. You increase that distance between the darkest and brightest values, you're immediately going to have a better piece of work. Other than that, fantastic drawing, by the way. All right, up next is Catherine. Catherine, you're in chat, aren't you? I saw you come in. Can you tell me what medium this is? I was thinking pastel, but at the same time, I was like, can that be colored pencil also? Maybe it's colored pencil and pastel. I couldn't quite tell, and that will help me determine. That will help me sort of elaborate on where you could improve. Oh, hey there, CT. Good to see you. And Noelani, good to see you as well. It has been a while since you've been able to catch a stream. Always a pleasure. I really like this picture, by the way. It's pastels. Okay, that I was leaning more towards pastels than colored pencils. I really like that all of the texture that you've captured in this tree. It genuinely feels like a tree. Like it feels like I could touch it and it would be rough to my hands. And it looks really, really great. I love the non-white background. You have sort of this like cloudy, blue, foggy backdrop of this tree with a little bit of like grassy, high grass texture. And one of the things, small detail, you have like this tan grass that represents the grass as it goes back into the fog. And then you just have a few little blades of the darker green grass closer to you. And it adds a perfect amount of depth to the already very small amount of background you have for the image. So it's actually really, really well done in that regard. It looks really good. And I love all of the unique colors. I hope that I'm really seeing blue purple here. If you added this blue purple and it's not just because of the photograph, that's perfect. That having those different colors in the shadows really adds a lot of depth to the dark areas of the tree. I am the reason you started pastels. Well, I hope you're enjoying pastels. All of that color texture in the tree is just flawless. The part that throws me off here is what is happening with the red leaves. The first thing is what the red leaves appear. Okay, it is blue purple. Yeah, it's just a beautiful choice of color. What the red leaves are attached to feels less like it feels less like part of the tree and more like a rope. It feels more like a rope, the way that it stands out, and the uniform thickness, because twigs, they always stem from a thicker part of a branch. And so it sort of it feels too uniform in its thickness as it comes. And like, for instance, it appears to start here and goes down and then it branches off, but the thickness doesn't ever change. And so that's why I was like, I couldn't tell, I couldn't tell if it was a rope or if it was a twig. And then if it's a rope, I feel like it starts out of nowhere. And if it's a rope, I would love to see some playfulness in the rope and like maybe like tied around a branch or like hanging down over here or something. Because it just feels a little out of context. I don't know. I just don't quite know what to call it. Other than that, I like the use of the red, but I feel like the leaves fall flat in comparison to the tree. The tree, the texture and the depth is perfect, but the leaves feel very two-dimensional in comparison. It's poison ivy that grew on the cherry tree, very old cherry tree. Okay. So this is supposed to be a twig or a vine. I guess it's less of it's not necessarily a twig. It's more of like the stem vine of the ivy. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I just the leaves feel much more two-dimensional in comparison to the tree. if you just used soft pastels, you didn't use any pastel pencils here, that could be something to consider adding to your tools, some pastel pencils to help you get some of these details. I'm trying to think of what you could do to these leaves here. Let's see. They wouldn't have much of a shine to them because the sort of foggy environment. I feel like maybe if they were just softened with their vibrancy a little bit, you can still have them very vibrant, but maybe if they weren't as vibrant as they appear, so utilizing a little bit of the green from the tree just to tone them down a little bit, because they're so contrasted in vibrancy from the tree and the environment that they stand out almost unnaturally. And then also the vine of the ivy. I don't think it needs to necessarily be so clear. So maybe if it wasn't so bright, altering the value a little bit sort of makes it feel more like it fits in the scene. Whereas here it's almost highlighted. It's highlighted throughout. I think that's what it is. It has like this consistent highlight. So maybe just having it less highlighted in maybe a few areas, maybe like this, cutting it down here. Maybe a little bit here, a little bit there. So now it's just highlighted where the light is slightly hitting it. Same could be true with the leaves. So maybe where the leaves have a little bit more saturation to them is just you instead of highlighting them with a brighter color, you actually highlight the leaves with saturation. So a touch of saturation to brighten the leaf. So here's the before, here's the after. So I toned down the saturation in a few spots on the leaves just to help it not pop off the page so much. And I left some of the saturation in some spots, so you still get that nice like pop of the color. But it adds more dimension to the leaves so that they look more three-dimensional. And then also darkening the vine a little bit in a few areas to give it kind of a three-dimensional flow, because before it sort of just looks flat on there. And by darkening a few of the areas, now it has kind of like this wavy feel to it. All right. Fantastic, Catherine. I really did like this image a lot. It has a very soothing look to it. All right, up next is Lori. This is a really cool sort of impressionistic pastel image. And what I love about this is like the bright colors, and sometimes it's using a lot of colors can be tricky. When you have a bunch of bright colors, you can really end up with something that doesn't look all that great. But I think Lori pulled it off quite well here, with how many bright colors she was able to bring into this image, and it still worked, because anybody that looks at this, they're going to see just this warm footpath leading into just a beautiful array of flowers. And you're going to see like these distant trees, a little hill, like a little dirt hill over here with like some grass. Maybe these are like field of flowers or something. But everybody sees that. And that's not easy to pull off with this style. It's just flat out not easy to do. People that see, I've focused mainly on realism. That's what I've practiced for a long time. That's what I do. It's what appeals to me as an artist. but I've tried to do the looser style of things, and it's just not easy to do well. There is a degree of skill in capturing sort of the essence of an object so that it's interpreted as to what it is. Nobody's going to interpret this as just throwing colors at a page. Everyone's going to interpret this as a path leading through a huge array of different colored flowers. Where I think some small, tiny improvements for this particular project is a bit of perspective for the pathway. So I'm going to try to adjust. See if I can do this. I'm going to try to adjust the pathway a little bit. And one of the ways that I was considering doing it is if I could just widen this pathway down here at the bottom, what that's going to do is it's going to make it feel like it's leading closer to you. So I'm going to stretch these colors out a little bit so it's not going to look all that great. But I wanted to widen this pathway a tad so that, perspectively speaking, it feels like it's coming closer to you and it leads deeper into the flowers. So I'm sort of just arbitrarily stretching it a little bit to get that effect. Ignore the squiggly lines here. I think I can correct that. I don't use the liquify tool too much. There we go. So here's the before, or here's the after. It just sort of establishes the perspective of that path a little bit deeper, and it feels like it's longer. It feels like it's a bit longer. That's one thing that I think would have improved the effect that you're creating here. The other thing is, so you have these nice dark values, really great use of contrast, by the way. And then you also have them in the back here. And I think maybe if you didn't have them in the back, being nitpicky here, by the way, just, oops, didn't mean to do that. So I'm just going to lighten the values a little bit. And so if you add lighter values back here, just subtly, small light value. Now these trees feel a little bit further in the distance. You could also even consider desaturating just a tad. Oops, didn't mean to do that. So desaturating back there a little bit. And you can see how subtle this is. So it's teeny tiny, very small change. And I just like that it makes it feel slightly more further away. And that's all I would change about this, really. I wouldn't change anything else about it. Just correcting the perspective on the path so it feels like it's coming more towards you. And then maybe consider using less saturated colors in the background just so that it feels further away. Because that's usually what these sort of impressionistic projects require for precision, is the understanding of, the value and saturation levels as things get further away. Since you're not relying on details to tell the viewer what is happening, you have to use all the other tools that you have, which is color and value. Alrighty, up next is Dodec. I'm going to do that one next. First, this portrait, this graphite portrait. It's a fantastic portrait. I think the picture might be a little bit darker than what it should be, but I'm not gonna correct it just in case I'm wrong. Very accurate portrait. I saw the reference photo in the use of the grid method. So it was really accurate. I didn't pull the reference photo up, but trust me, it's very accurate and really well done. The one thing, there's everything good about this. And I love that you've considered like the use of red sort of arbitrarily. I think the importance of the drawstrings on the hoodie is not important at all, strangely enough, but it's a fun color. Like, it's a fun color to splash in there. And I think what I may have considered, considering his hair color and his skin color, I'm going to guess his eyes are blue. I'm going to grab some gray blue. And I think that maybe you could have utilized color also in the eyes, just to maybe a little bit more, go a little bit more blue. I'm just going to do this a tiny bit. But you could use your colored pencils or whatever you use to color that red, to add color to the eyes as well. Because without color, with the eyes just being what they are, the red strings here, which, as I said, probably don't have a significant importance to them, they sort of keep pulling your eyes down away from the face. And so to counteract that initial pull of the viewer's eyes, you could utilize the color within the eyes themselves to sort of create a little bit of a balance so that the viewer isn't like constantly looking at the strings coming from the hoodie. But other than that, it's a fantastic drawing. You did a really great job on it. All right, his .x other drawing here is of a dog, puppy it looks like, kind of have puppy-like features. .x, I don't know if I've seen you do an animal. I've seen several of your portraits by now. Yeah, I've seen several of your portraits, but I don't know if you've ever done an animal, so I don't know. You did say this was kind of like a experiment. You were doing etching. So if you can tell, you can see the etching lines throughout the fur and the whiskers, all the etching. And etching is where you press, you indent on the paper so that it just shows up white. And so I don't know if this was just like a quick experiment that you were testing out, but it does give me the opportunity to talk about the technique I use for doing fur. And this is really, really well universally applied throughout any furry animal, and also applies to human hair as well. I've done many, many tutorials at this point on fur and hair, and fur direction. Oh, you did a cat with blue eyes. Okay. Anyways, so I've done a lot of tutorials on fur and hair. The important features always to keep in mind is the directionality of the fur. And you've established that pretty clearly here. Where's my mouse? You've established it really clearly in your image. You can see all of these clear lines here leading to the directionality of the fur. Now, since I imagine this is maybe your first time sort of experimenting with etching, so you weren't quite sure how to go about it to get the effect that you're looking for. But I can see that you've utilized the direction of the fur very well to map out what the flow is. And this is something a lot of people have a problem with when it comes to fur, is that they struggle with the natural flow of the hair. and you're going to have to deal with intersections. This area here on cats or dogs or any animal that has like a snout is one of the trickier areas to do, because you have all of these intersections. You have all of these intersections of the fur texture coming in. So you have the fur, which, by the way, the fur on the snout here, these lines are far too long. So aside from the flow, aside from the directional flow of the fur, the other important feature is the length of the lines that you use. So all of the fur here on dogs is really short, unless you have like a Yorkie, I know Schnauzer, some of those dogs that have the longer fur on their snout that if you let it grow out, you know, it goes down kind of like a beard. But these lines should be basically dots or small dashes. And you utilize the directional flow to lay out where those dashed lines go. So that's one major issue here, is that all of your fur lines are far too long. Yeah, it is quite tricky. Because the flow is just one feature, and then you have the length of the lines as the second feature. So as you get farther away from the nose, these lines will start to get longer. So up here, you might have lines this long or even this long, something like that. But down here, you're going to have dashed lines and dots. And it's still important to maintain that directionality with these small lines. But again, you have those two features. You have direction and you have length. It's very much like a vector field if you've ever taken linear algebra. That's essentially what it is. If you don't know what a vector field is, just Google it. Yeah, so you got the direction mapped out, but you missed the point on the length. Length, as you can imagine, determines the length of the hairs themselves, and the hairs here are not this long. And then your intersections here, they're very abrupt. You can see that creates this almost clean edges of intersections. Fur doesn't care about that. The way fur is going to intersect is it's going to crisscross. Just because this fur is going here and this fur is going here doesn't mean that this fur is just going to be like, nah, I won't go any further. That fur is going a different direction. I'll just stop here. This is just not how hair works. So those intersections are a little bit more ambiguous than these clear-cut lines that you have separated here. Personally, I don't like to use the etching because etching is texture, and I don't like texture on my subjects. But it is a useful technique to approach fur texture. You can, if done well, it can look very good. The other thing is, of course, I don't know what's happening here. It sort of looks like the dog is going, oh, like it's confused. I'm not sure if its mouth is open or not. I'm a little confused at this, what's happening here exactly. It looks kind of funny. But the value. So because I'm not quite sure, it sort of looks like it's puckering its lips a little bit. I don't know where the chin is of the dog, because the value doesn't quite change. The chest of the dog and the chin, they sort of just mush together. And if I were to imagine maybe where that separation is happening, maybe get a darker color here. then maybe something like here-ish, possibly, like where the head separates from the chest, because I can't tell, and that's a really important feature when doing animals that have like the chin that comes out further. Make sure you create that separation. But yeah, it's a work in progress. I think that this is a little bit more of a practice piece. But I don't know if I have, I'm trying to think if I don't have a graphite tutorial of a dog, but maybe I'll do one in the future. All right, up next is Tatiana. I only have a few images left. Tatiana, she shared this just beautiful pastel painting of a magpie, and this one is great. You know, when people do birds, people usually go for like the super colorful birds and whatnot. The Kingfisher, what was that bird called? King's Fisherman or something. It's like that long beaked, really thin. It almost looks like a hummingbird a little bit, but it has like those really oily colors, really bright colors in the feathers. People like those bright colors, but I like the simple birds. Like I like ravens, magpies, just simple colors. But the way she captured the blue reflection, because magpies are black and white, and there's like no black. There's like no black in this at all. The face, it looks like it's smiling. Like it just looks like it has such personality. Kingfisher. Okay. Yeah. I really, really like the way this magpie came out. There's not really much I can critique here. I can make some general suggestions, and I think one of my suggestions is, again, utilizing complements. So she has this reddish brown color here for the sunlight reflection. Oops. The reflection of the sun. And because of the color of blue, if we take this blue and we kind of just shift it over to its pure complement of orange, just kind of like here, maybe even brighter. I feel like she could have utilized this orange color. Let me see if there's a lighten overlay. Yeah, there we go. A little bit of overlay. I'm just going to overdo this really quick. Give me a second. I'm going to oversaturate it and then I'll tone it back a little bit. But even that looks really cool. So utilizing the fact that the blue and orange are complements could have boosted those highlights even more. I think you could have gone even brighter with the highlights. You don't have to go that bright, but I love the use. Blue and orange are my favorite complementary colors. So having the opportunity with such a subject to utilize those complementary colors to really bring out the warmth of the sun, I think that orange would have made a big difference. And I like it a lot. But that's sort of subjective. It still looks beautiful like this, but I like it like this because the blue and the orange are complements, and it really warms up the bird a lot. Other than that, there's nothing more that I could suggest for this. It's just really great. I love the subject too. Magpies are definitely one of my favorite birds. All right, up next is Susan. Susan's image here was also incredibly small. It was, I'm not sure what happened, Susan. Your picture was like, when I imported it, it was literally like this small. It was really teeny tiny. So I can't do a very accurate critique on any small details. What I can say is, you captured the values well. I'd say maybe a little softness on the shadow here for the tablecloth. It could be improved a little bit. The coins could be a tiny bit brighter. Right now they look a little black. I'm not sure how small you worked for this project. Really difficult to tell because of how small the image was. I'm not sure what happened there when you posted it, but I mean, everything came together really nicely, and it does still look really good, even considering the size of the image. It still looks really good. I'm sure it looks great in person as well. I'm not going to spend too much time on this one because the picture was very small. Oh, did you have trouble uploading it? This picture came out fine though, for some reason. I imagine you used the same camera to take pictures of both of these projects. This one is also Susan's. And this was the pastel project that we just did on Monday of this week. Tutorial is available for everyone, by the way, so you can find that on my channel if you want to do this. I love the color choice. Mine was more purple. You have more gray blue, which I think has a more natural appeal to it, has a darker appeal to it. Your lightning also feels more aggressive, very, very aggressive, stretching all the way across the sky. Yours has a much darker appeal to it, but looks really, really good. This tree right here looks a little wonky. Maybe if it was just oops. Maybe if this was just pulled in a little bit. Let me just clone stamp the sky. Just pull that in a tiny bit. It's just sticking out kind of oddly. Other than that, there's really no way I could consider like anything other than that tiny little detail. Everything else looks really cool. So you did a fantastic job on that. Yeah, even the lightning is really good. The lightning has a very nice characteristic to it. Like I said, it feels more aggressive, where mine just looks like lightning. Your lightning has character. I don't know how you do that. But that is the last project that I have here. So if anybody has any last minute questions, feel free to ask them. In the meantime, I'm going to quickly mention the art club. I have a link for the art club in the description. So if you want to sign up for that, join the Discord also. But we're going to be starting a new pastel project next Monday. So I'm excited for that. I think maybe I can even pull up the image. Let me see here. See if I can pull up this image. Desktop. So we're going to be doing this project right here. Pastel project. So we're going to utilize this this lovely portrait here. And most likely I'm going to crop this, by the way. I'm going to crop this about here. I really just like this part of the image. I think that makes for a beautiful portrait. And I don't know if I'm going to extend the top. I don't think I'm going to extend the top to fit in the feathery part of the hat. But yeah, this is going to be the next pastel tutorial. So if you want to join in when I do these projects live, because I do all of these tutorials live, and pastel projects are Monday and Tuesday, join the art club. What is my general advice for drawing hyper-realistic birds? Learn to draw just regular realistic birds first really well. Hyper-realism is something that will always be able to be built on top of a really well-drawn bird in the first place. And so if you can get comfortable with that level of realism, just, you know, the everyday realism, you're going to learn everything that you need to push it further. Also, always draw bigger. The more realistic you get, or the more realistic that you want to get, your projects must become bigger. And the other thing is, don't be too critical of your work based on what you see online, because photographs are the biggest liars. For instance, let me see here. What can I open up? Or, you know, let's just go back to this. Let's go to Joanne's project here. So Joanne's project here looks very, very good. At this scale, let's just fit this. At this scale, you're not convincing anybody that this is hyper realistic. And that's not to degrade her fantastic job that she's done here. It's just, we know that this is a piece of art. We know that this was a pastel painting from a very good artist. No one's going to be convinced at this scale, because I believe Joanne also did this at 8x10. So it's kind of small. There's not a lot of space for the really minute, tiny details. But if you go here, you might be able to convince somebody that's a photograph. And so when you do a drawing, when you do a painting, and your painting is at this scale, but then you take a photograph of it and everybody sees it on their phone and computer, and they see it at this scale, the detail feels impossible to create. And that's because it is at this scale. At this scale, it's impossible to create. So you just got to be mindful of that. Try not to let yourself get discouraged by looking at other artwork online. Anyways, yes, so that is going to be it for today. Thank you guys so much for coming by and hanging out. I really appreciate it. I hope that you learned something. I hope you enjoyed also the sound of my new microphone, because I have a new microphone if you didn't notice. And I think that it sounds significantly better than my other microphone. So this is my first public live stream with it, so I'm excited. I'm kind of an audiophile like that. But anyways, you guys have a fantastic weekend. I'll see all the art club members on Monday, and we'll get started on that lovely new project. So anyways, yeah, take care everyone. I'll see you next time. Peace.